you.
Pleasure, pleasure.
Well, today we're going to talk about Du Bois and what he called the Criteria of Negro Art. It's a essay that was published in the Crisis magazine in 1926, the height of the Harlem Renaissance.
Gotcha.
Now, we had talked about the Harlem Renaissance a little bit in the past on this show.
Okay.
The Harlem Renaissance was this great period of musical and literary and artistic upsurge in the black community, and such figures as Langston Hughes and Countee Cullen and Duke Ellington and Fletcher Henderson and Zora Neale Hurston and Jessie Fawcett and many, many more came on the scene and put forward this idea of black art, a specific black art. And now a big debate took place, especially between Langston Hughes and W.E.B. Du Bois, over the function of black art and what constitutes black art. You know, first of all, the issue is, should the artist operate on his or her own, or should the artist be accountable to the struggle for black freedom? Now, at the time, Langston Hughes took the position that the artist should be allowed to do his or her thing.
Okay.
Du Bois took the position that he was really not interested in any art that did not serve the interests of black liberation and Pan-Africanism. And of course, this puts a very high standard. And, you know, the other thing is, what is the difference between art and entertainment? You know, there was a lot of black entertainment then, as is the case now. But all entertainment is not art. Usually, and back then it was the case too, what black entertainers did was to entertain the white mainstream or the white elite for money.
Got you.
What the artists did was to uplift the community, and often did not get paid the same way that the entertainers did. And, you know, of course,
today they say that's rap versus hip-hop, right? They have a debate, a similar debate that we have in our community, where we have these mainstream artists that are extremely successful, but they perform primarily for white audiences.
That's right.
And they do the sponsors and all the, you know, corporate endorsements. And then they have other artists like, I was thinking like a My Son or Immortal Technique, other rappers that engage in social consciousness, don't get paid nearly as much, but are far more true to themselves and their community. That's and use their art for progress instead of profit.
And usually entertainment, black entertainment, verges on being a coon show, you know, for white people. And once you do that...
We didn't say nothing about Kanye. We're just talking.
Yeah, but Kanye is not the only one. If he were the only one...
We'd be all right.
We'd be all right. We have so many that have sold out for money. And are usually more interested in celebrity than with humanity, and with black humanity in particular.
Wow.
So, you know, and I think, I don't know whether you were here, a couple of weeks ago we did a program at Mother Bethel AME Church called Blessed Are the Peacemakers on Paul Robeson, Martin Luther King Jr., and W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh, okay.
And the real revelation was Paul Robeson, because Paul Robeson was this great artist, this great linguist, this great Pan-Africanist, who spent his last 10 years here in Philadelphia. He died here at his sister's house at 51st and Walnut, and yet we hardly mention his name. He was, as I said, I think at the time, he spoke about 25 languages.
Wow.
And he spoke and learned linguistic groups. And one of his theories is that language began in the heart of Africa and spread throughout the world from there. And he said because he understood African languages, he could sing the Chinese national anthem in Chinese, or the Soviet national anthem in Russia. And he said it was easier for him to learn Russian than it was for him to learn French, because he theorized that there was a cultural belt going back thousands of years between the center of Africa and the center of Europe, and that linguistic groups Bantu languages spoken in the Congo were closer to Slavic languages like Russian than Russian or the African languages were to the Germanic or Anglo-Saxon languages. So Paul Robeson had this theory: let me know your songs and I will know your soul.
Wow.
You know, and that was Du Bois also. You know, Du Bois called our primary narrative sorrow songs. Let me know your songs and I'll know the souls of black folk.
Wow.
Let me hear your music and I will be able to tell you the health of your culture, of your society, and of your people. And that's why I think this question of art is very, very important in the lives of black people right now, because in many ways, corporate control of what we know as our art has obscured our real art and the souls of black folk, even from black people.
Now, I know there's a lot of people listening thinking about the current top 10. So the diagnosis, we're in critical condition if you go by the state of popular music.
And you know, Aaron, it's so interesting. You know, I think you're from North Philadelphia, as am I.
Yeah, well, I'm born in Jersey, but the place I've lived the most of my life was North Philadelphia. Well, I've been there for over 20 years.
We won't hold that against you.
I appreciate it. So shout out to Jersey. Hey, come on. All my Jersey people are like, hey, Jersey, you better stand up for Jersey. But yeah, it's like a Tupac situation where you can't really decide between two places you've lived half your life. But no, North Philly is where I was definitely groomed and made.
You know, back in my days, we had the Uptown Theater.
Oh, yes. I hear about people going to see people like James Brown and all that, wearing halter tops and pencil skirts and all kind of things, but now they act like they don't remember them days because their grandparents.
They went to see James Brown and Smokey Robinson and Miles Davis and John Coltrane.
Wow.
And, you know, the reason I mention the Uptown and that situation is because the artist was closer to the people than they are now. Artists are often taken from the people in the name of making them monetarily successful.
I hear you.
And back then, you know, James Brown had to perform for his people, and it was unmediated. It was he on the stage and a crowd of black people in the audience, and he had to perform to the standards that black people expected, which are different than what white audiences or white critics expect of black performers or black artists.
Now,
and the art was better then, of course.
I was going to say, what are some of the differences that you see with regards to the expectations from these different audiences?
Well, you know, one thing, and this applies to a lot of black audiences too, we don't expect artists or performers to last but so long. Everything is throwaway. Everything is immediate. It is not creating art. And the artist, or the entertainer, I should say, also looks at his art or her art as very temporary. I'm not producing anything for the future. So I'm not accountable neither to history or to my own people. And this is a problem. One of the things that Robeson always said is that the artist has to take a stand. Either you're going to stand with the oppressor or you're going to stand with the oppressed. Now, what we have too often in current times are artists saying, I'm going to be ambiguous. I'm not going to take a firm position on either side or the other because it might endanger my career.
There's literally rappers that have said that.
Oh, yes.
There's a rapper, Young Thug, who was asked on the red carpet, like, what do you feel about Mike Brown and racism? And he said, we're going to let the critics and the politicians talk about that because we're wearing diamonds and we're traveling and making money. Literally out of his mouth said exactly what you're saying and just was unabashedly, unashamed about not having any stance politically in regards to the safety of African people. So
that's why we have to have a standard or a criteria. Everything that's in a black face is not pro-black. And that's why Du Bois said, what is the criteria of black art? What makes art black?
Wow.
Is it the color of the skin of the person performing it, or is it its content, its ideology, its politics? Can you be black? And I ask this generally. Can you be black as a politician, an academic, a rapper, a performer? Can you be black and not take a firm, consistent position concerning the oppression and poverty and lack of education and lack of health care and violence among us that is occurring? You don't take a position on that, I don't know how you can be black.
And the majority of the people that the professions you're naming, I don't know their stances on even the murder of African people. When I'm thinking of comedians and athletes and artists in my mind, I'm sure that people like Barbara Atkins are listening and really rejoicing. They were talking about Paul Robeson. She called earlier today about inviting me to the Paul Robeson house. So just him taking his rightful place in these conversations, I'm sure is pleasing to people who understand, especially even as an athlete. So we have an activist, athlete, performer, very few people embody all of this stuff.
Shakespearean actor.
So for people like this to be written out of history and for other artists and athletes to not even understand this example. Like, I don't know how much a LeBron James knows about a Paul Robeson, but I think it would definitely help to inform his politics and his activism and his athleticism in a way that can benefit African people worldwide. But I see that's why a lot of these conversations and this information that even I received at Temple University, in your class, that's why there's a war on that kind of information being discussed, because people do change when they have these different examples.
Absolutely. And, this is why what goes on at this station is so very valuable.
Yes.
I know people can say, well, we got all these problems. The community is in turmoil. Our youth are unemployed. The school system has collapsed.
Or been collapsed, right?
Yeah.
A lot of listeners, according to them, we hear y'all. Like, we're just talking. But I know somebody's saying, yell at the radio station, no, the schoolboy did it. We understand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And people are dealing with this in their everyday lives.
Yes, sir.
So what does Du Bois or Robeson or the great art that we have produced, what does this mean to me? And that's, people like yourself and myself, we have an obligation to help our people to understand what our art means to them, because it is their art.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Definitely, yeah.
And there is something more. There is something more than that which is fed to us in the corporate media. And I underline corporate because that is for profit and ideology.
That's powerful.
And we're not going to see what we need, what our spirit needs, what our souls need in a media that is controlled by people who do not give a 2 cents about people that look like you.
They don't give anything. Zero giving, right?
Zero giving, zero concern.
Wow. No, and that's very important, because a lot of people, even critics of the current artistry, they don't seem to recognize that this is only a slim layer of what really exists, because they're so inundated with what corporate media wants them to believe is black music that they think this is the totality of what we are expressing, when in reality this is just what the corporations view as more profitable and more malleable, and they say this is what we want to promote. And a lot of people, even the adults and the actual listeners, they think, hip-hop is this today. And it's like, no, there's a lot of people still continuing these traditions that you're discussing,
and
but they get no light.
I know you're a hip-hop person, but I think even to evaluate hip-hop, you have to go before hip-hop. Yes. And Philadelphia is very important. Very important. I'm from North Philly, a section formerly known as the Tenderloin. Richard Allen Project and all of that.
Richard Allen. How we do?
Named after the great Richard Allen, And out of that project came some of the greatest music. I'm talking about jazz music. If you know Lee Morgan, I don't know that you...
Yeah, I didn't know the connection between Richard Allen area. I definitely didn't know the connection between the jazz greats in that area.
Well,
so this is new. I'm learning too. No, go ahead. No, break it down, please. Talk about it.
Well, there was a family known as the Debres, and
I know some people with that name in the city today.
Which one do you know, perchance?
I went to school with a young lady named Ebony DeBrest, and their family was at Leon Sullivan's church.
Absolutely.
So same family?
Yes.
Amazing. Small world.
Yeah.
See how that works?
Well, I think their father is my my childhood friend.
Wow.
His name is Richard DeBrest.
Wow.
And he had 4 other brothers. It was a family of 5 boys, and they lived in Richard Allen. And the second to the oldest, his name was Spanky DeBrest.
Wow.
He was a great bass player. His best friend was Lee Morgan. And all of these musicians would come to their house because their father had a piano. And people such as McCoy Tyner, John Coltrane, Benny Golson, I don't know that name.
No, I've heard these names. And plus, I went to school with
Can I just
with
say
Anya.
one other small thing?
Go ahead.
Then we'll get to Anya. But another small thing was that people such as Art Blakey and Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie would come and sit on the stoop outside their apartment listening to these young lions play this music. And out of that came what we today call hard bop, the evolution out of bebop, out of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. But I mention that to say that this foundation of art and music that swept the world is anchored in North Philadelphia. I could mention one other person that came out of that.
No, talk about it.
The great Norman Connors.
Wow.
Who was a jazz drummer who went into the field of fusion, as it were. And he has a great version of Pharoah Sanders and Leon Thomas's piece called The Creator Has a Master Plan. But he's out of Richard Allen.
Now, how does Philadelphia always get written out of its proper place in these artistic histories? We have a similar debate and discussion. I was actually in a class where we were talking about PSK, 6 in the morning, and it says, PSK, what does that mean? People always say, what made that cream? So there's a rap song, PSK, right? And there's this origin of gangster rap in Philadelphia. There's an artist named Ice-T, most people are familiar with. He literally listened to PSK and made his own song about 6 in the morning. Took the whole cadence. The PSK was that mean, and Ice-T will say, 6 in the morning, police at my door. He listened to this Philadelphia rap and started what later became some of the origins of popularizing gangster rap. Ice-T gives full credit to Philadelphia, Parkside Killer. Like he says, PSK, I heard it, and that's what influenced me, and that's the origin of gangster rap. But somehow, the way that the histories are written, similarly to with this jazz situation, they seem to give a lot more credence to a Harlem Renaissance and other different areas and contributions. And with hip hop, it's the same way. They'll go from New York and go straight to LA. They'll say then NWA came, and they'll skip over everything that happened in Philadelphia. And I don't know what we're not doing or what they're doing that makes that the case.
Well, we have to teach it.
Okay.
We have to teach it. We have to hold conferences and forums on it. We can't wait for the corporate media to tell the truth about jazz in particular.
Got you.
Because I think it's a pure form of our narrative. But, that's me. I'm a jazz R&B man. I think that's the foundation. I think the blues and the sorrow songs are all a part of this intellectual, artistic foundation that defines us as this very, very unique force in human history.
Oh, you're creating all these forms of popular music.
Yeah.
So this is Dr. Anthony Montero, and this is Aaron Smith, the rap professor, and Kwesa, put some respect on her name. And hopefully after the break, if you can read a little portion, of Du Bois, because I know there's some Du Bois, lovers out there that really want to get deep into the text. And we're going to do everything. We're going to satisfy the music people and pop culture, and also, go full class mode. So class will be in session when we come back from the break. And we thank you for tuning in and waking up with Word, y'all.
Philly never stops moving. We're punching the clock, we're burning the midnight oil. We're morning people and late night legends. Our time is everything. That's why we take SEPTA. It's more than a ride. It's 5 or 10 or 30 minutes of me time. Time to text mom, crush a crossword, catch the zombie finale, or nap like a boss. All while we're getting into town, out of town, and all around town. SEPTA is our freedom. SEPTA is our Philly. SEPTA is how we roll. Visit iScepterPhilly.com to roll with us. Reality Check with Charles Ellison.
Daniel Solomon.
Black women have very high levels of stress in their day-to-day lives, and a lot of that comes from ongoing experiences of racism. So it's not just interpersonal, it's also racism that is born out of structures or systematic racism. And so that's kind of what we dug into in the paper.
Don't miss Reality Check. Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. Right here on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Independent Black Media.
Philadelphia, it's time for change. This is Kevin Johnson, and like you, I'm tired of electing the same old politicians to office. When 400,000 Philadelphians are living in poverty and 67% of our children are not reading at grade level, we need new leadership. On May 15th, I'm asking that you, the people, press button number 9 and elect Kevin Johnson. It's time for change. It's time for new leadership. It's time to elect Kevin Johnson for the new 3rd Congressional District.
Paid for and approved by Kevin Johnson for Congress.
Support independent Black media by joining the 4-Word movement. Take advantage of our 30-30-30 installment plan and start or renew your 4-Word membership with just 3 monthly credit or debit payments of $30. Call 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com. You're listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Independent Black Media.
You are waking up with Word, WURD, 900 AM or 96.1 FM or WURDradio.com. Make sure you log on, listen live anytime. Get that app and get that membership. It is Young Fearless, the Rap Professor with Kawesta. Put some respect on her name. And we are joined by the one and only Dr. Anthony Montero, and we are discussing the importance of Du Bois, the importance of jazz and blues as a foundation to understand music and to understand our place in society and the infiltration and misrepresentation oftentimes of corporately owned media in popular culture and Black history. Brother, Dr. Anthony Montero, can you talk a little bit about Du Bois from the text for those who would like us to take them to, they say take them to church, take them to class?
Yeah, well, I want to read a part of this essay entitled Criteria of Negro Art,
All right.
which is what's criteria means standard of Negro art. And he says, we who are dark can see America in a way that white Americans cannot. And seeing our country thus, are we satisfied with its present goals and ideals? He continues, if you tonight suddenly should become full-fledged Americans, if your color faded, or the color line here in Chicago was miraculously forgotten, suppose, too, you became at the same time rich and powerful, what is it that you would want? What would you immediately seek? Would you buy the most powerful of motor cars and outrace Cook County? Would you buy the most elaborate estate on the North Shore? Would you be a Rotarian or member of the Lion Club or a whatnot of the very last degree? Would you wear the most striking clothes, give the richest dinners, and buy the longest press notices? In other words, would you become white? Even as you visualize such ideals, you know in your hearts that these are not the things you really want. You realize this sooner than the average white American because, pushed aside as we have been in America, there has come to us not only a certain distaste for the tawdry and flamboyant, but a vision of what the world could be if it were really a beautiful world, if we had the true spirit, if we had the seeing eye, the cunning hand, the feeling heart, if we had, to be sure, not perfect happiness, but plenty of good hard work, the inevitable suffering that always comes with life, sacrifice and waiting, all that, but nevertheless lived in a world where men and women know, where men and women create, where they realize themselves and where they enjoy life. It is that sort of world we want to create for ourselves and for all Africans. And then he continues, such is beauty. Its variety is infinite. Its possibility is endless. In normal life, all may have it and have it yet again. But then he continues, in this world, seldom do ordinary people have the opportunity to be exposed to beauty. And then he kind of concludes, and I'd like to just read this last paragraph.
Sure.
Thus it is the bounded duty of Black America to begin this great work of the creation of beauty, of the preservation of beauty, of the realization of beauty, and we must use in this work all the methods that men and women have used before. And what have been the tools of the artist in times gone by? First of all, he and she has used the truth, not for the sake of truth, not as a scientist seeking truth, but as one upon whom truth eternally thrusts itself as the highest handmaiden of imagination, as the one great vehicle of universal understanding. Again, artists have used goodness in all its aspects of justice, honor, and right, not for the sake of an ethical sanction, but as the one true method of gaining sympathy and human interest. And then I'll end here. The apostle of beauty thus becomes the apostle of truth. And right now, by choice, but by inner and outer compulsion, free he is, but his freedom is ever bounded by truth and justice. And slavery only dogs him when he is denied the right to tell the truth or recognize an ideal of justice. Thus all art is propaganda.
Wow.
And ever must be, despite the wailing of the purest. I stand in utter shamelessness and say that whatever art I have for writing has been used always for propaganda, for gaining the rights of Black folk to love and enjoy. I do not care a damn for any art that is not used for the propaganda, but I do care when propaganda is confined only to white people, while for Black people it is stripped and silent.
Wow. Now, see, the phone lines already lighting up, because we have one of the greatest concentrations of scholars, part of the URD family. We have Brother Timothy on the line representing South Philly. Brother Timothy, thank you for waking up with Word.
How you two professors doing? You're doing a good job.
Doing well, thank you.
Oh, wow, it's great. Couldn't ask for more. I'm going to say that Du Bois did a good job in the Black Reconstruction in doing a chapter on propaganda. And during that era, I think propaganda was a very important thing. So did Marcus Garvey. And I'm going to say a lot of people ignore the crisis and the cartoons, the people who wrote out of it, because the art of the crisis in describing a man lynched or to describe poverty or what the color line was, Du Bois does a very good job of doing that. Same thing with Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey's paper has been banned in many countries. And one country has never banned it was America. They wanted to take and put him under the microscope. He does a very good job of using positive propaganda. These two men use positive propaganda.
Can I interrupt you, Timothy? Can I interrupt you because I just want to tell the callers what you were talking about. In Black Reconstruction, the last chapter is entitled The Propaganda of History. And you're right about Du Bois that art and science is always taking sides ideologically. There is no pure art. There is no pure history. There is no pure science. And what Du Bois is saying, science that serves truth should serve the interests of the oppressed masses. And the same thing was his position on art. So this idea of propaganda was not a bad word for him. For him, propaganda meant standing up on one or the other side.
Well, he's been an example. And today, Dr. Montero, we look what's going on now with a comment like a Kanye West or Carson, who says that we were immigrants, and Kanye using the word like we had a choice to be in slavery.
Yeah.
See, that's the negative propaganda. But knowing our history and telling the truth about it will just cancel that negative propaganda out, and we give a person like Du Bois and Marcus Garvey or the Harlem Renaissance era and get that positive propaganda to cross out that negative propaganda. That was a very good era, and they used propaganda well.
Good.
Well, thank you for waking up with Word, Brother Timothy, and thank you for your commentary.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No, that's a very powerful point, this idea of using propaganda for the right purposes, because you don't see a lot of progressive political propaganda with regards to Pan-Africanism.
And, you know, propaganda is from the word propagate. You know, as professors should be to profess, to stand up, even if it means losing your job, losing your life, or being vilified.
Especially talking African American studies, because you already know you're not going to have friends in the highest places of the university, regardless of where you work. Once you say I'm African American studies professor,
and a lot of things depends upon the content. Whether the content propagates progressive or radical change.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, oh yeah. So that's, you know, profess, propagate, stand up for, take a side. That's what Du Bois was talking about.
And I noticed a lot of artists. It's happened with LeBron James recently, where they said he didn't say enough, and he said too much. Right? I remember when even with Kevin Hart, comedian Kevin Hart, people were saying he needs to say more stuff. But then when they say stuff, them not being professors or, you know, professionals at propaganda, people say, man, what the hell are you saying? And he's looking like, I'm a comedian. Like, you said to say something. So a lot of people don't understand the historical context that would give them the tools necessary to be more effective with regards to their use of propaganda. Because they just think if they tweet about it or hashtag it, that they're in the struggle.
And, you know, there's an interesting concept, I don't know that you've ever heard of it, called propaganda of the deed.
No, I never heard of it.
Propaganda of the act. And that reminds me of Colin Kaepernick. The deed, the act, is an act of propaganda. It is propagating a certain set of beliefs, a certain morality, a certain ethic, a certain commitment to the truth over my own well-being. And I think, you know, Colin Kaepernick comes closest to those figures like Tommy Smith and
Juan Carlos,
and John
68.
Carlos, and of course the great Muhammad Ali. You know,
gave it all up, right?
Yeah.
That's a powerful. Now, how do you feel? I know a lot of young people are so obsessed with capitalism and the potential, and like we talked about that veneer with the corporate America and the media, a lot of the young people have a veneer of capitalism that they can't see progress beyond capital gain. So a lot of them, when you talk about these examples, they look negatively upon the whole giving it up, because they feel like if you're gonna do anything and make any real change, you need a whole bunch of money. And they're in a different time where they view, you know, the sacrifice in often a negative way. Like if he had just made the money, he could have did this, and this, but they don't really see the legacy component and the example that's set through the sacrifice.
Now, this is very important, the point that you're raising, and that's because what are the examples that they have? You know, I know coming up, my heroes and heroines were people in the civil rights movement. And I remember I was at Lincoln, and there was a young woman, a very beautiful young woman, but I was so intimidated by her because she was a SNCC worker, civil rights worker in Mississippi. And this woman just was like, could walk on water, you know. So, and then of course, you know, the rise of the Black Panther Party and people like Fred Hampton and
Chairman Fred.
And my classmate John Huggins, who was killed at UCLA, he went to Lincoln with us. And you know, the thing is that if you have those kinds of role models, they become like propagandists of the deed. Their actions speak louder than any words could ever speak. And it molded us. It shaped us. It determined the character of music. It gave us, and this is very, very important, I think more important than anything else, than all the learning, than all the books, what is your ethical foundation? What is your relationship to the truth? Are you prepared to tell the truth and stand up for the truth no matter what the consequences are? And it takes a Robus and it takes a Du Bois. It takes figures like this that endure through history to show us what the ethical, moral life is.
We are talking with Dr. Anthony Montero. Some of y'all already knew. They said, ain't nobody dropping that Du Bois knowledge, but Dr. Montero. So, yes, we had a great conversation today. We thank you all for calling in today with your comments, with your concerns. We thank Melissa Robbins for sharing her story about the Tompkins Vista Bank and the apparent or alleged discrimination that she experienced by the landscape workers. We thank the legacy and the memory of people like Paul Robeson of W.E.B. Du Bois. We thank the ancestors like Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X, and salute to attorney Timothy Welbeck, who's doing that program about Malcolm X, celebrating his legacy tomorrow. And let me get the information on where that's at. I got the information. Friends Center, 1501 Cherry Street. Shout out to the Breast family for contributing to black music so powerfully. Because I know somebody from a family that big must be listening. So shouts out to y'all. We appreciate everybody for calling in. Men of Courage, my man Taj, you might be calling in, later on this week. Everybody, Anton Moore, salute to you, good brother. Everybody doing all that great work. Who else did we speak with? That was it. It felt like we talked to a lot of people. But that's because the phone lines are always open and we do it for the people. It is Kawesa. Put some respect on her name. She's playing that powerful Paul Robeson right now. And it's me, Young Fearless, the rapping professor. And we thank everybody for waking up with word. And we want to make sure that you have a great, blessed, powerful, encouraged day. And use propaganda the right way. And like Meek Mill said, you got to be able to take a stand. He said, if I stand on it, I'm going to stand on it. Right? And that's what we need to do. Make sure you stand on your word and stay true to yourself. And just stay powerful. And don't back down. You're waking up with words, y'all. I got to talk like that because when Paul Robeson starts singing, it just make you straighten your back and put your chest out a little and deepen your voice just a little bit. And that's what we need in the community. More upstanding individuals. You're waking up with words, y'all.
The best way to keep moving? Stay